Hello, this is Daryl Justin Black, and in this video, I'll be discussing the historiography, focusing on the Army of Northern Virginia and General Robert E. Lee. The topic of my dissertation is General Robert E. Lee's Corps command structure and staffing in the Army of Northern Virginia, and I focus on the effectiveness and shortcomings of those topics. General Robert E. Lee and the Army of Northern Virginia are oftentimes considered the premier military forces for the Confederacy, much like the Army of the Potomac is for the North, and Ulysses S. Grant. The earliest historiography that really delves into Lee and the Army of Northern Virginia was done in the early part of the 1900s, about 1930 to 1944, and it's the premier historian was Douglas Southall Freeman from Virginia. I believe he was a Richmond newspaper editor at first. He wrote a 4-volume biography on Lee, which has recently been abridged. This one has a foreword by James M. McPherson. And his other seminal work, the one that really helps focus on my topic, is Lee's Lieutenants, A Study in Command, and that was originally published as a 3-part volume, which has also been abridged. Through his comprehensive studies, Freeman's, he examines the relationship between Lee and his Corps commanders, shedding light on the strengths and weaknesses of the Army of Northern Virginia's leadership. After Freeman, the next big historian was a man named Clifford Doughty, and he wrote a 3-part series that focused on the Army of Northern Virginia and Lee. This is Lee and his men at Gettysburg, The Death of a Nation. I believe this was chronologically, I believe it's the second one. He wrote Lee's last campaign, Death of a Nation, and The 7 Days. The 7 Days was published last, but it is the beginning of Lee's command of the Army of Northern Virginia during the Peninsula Campaign in 1862. Doughty's trilogy provides valuable insights into Lee's leadership, including his relationship with Corps commanders during pivotal battles. Again, the Peninsula Campaign, Lee and his men at Gettysburg, The Death of the Nation, focuses on Gettysburg, and Lee's last campaign, I believe, covers 1864 to 1865. So you have Cold Harbor, the Wilderness, and the Appomattox campaign, and Petersburg, of course. The next really groundbreaking publication is by Richard M. McMurray. This came out in '89, I believe. And it's called Two Great Rebel Armies, an essay in Confederate military history. So he focuses on the Army of Northern Virginia and Lee in the east, and the Army of Tennessee in the west, which had various commanders. His critical analysis challenged prevailing views of Lee's leadership, arguing that his Corps command structure was often ineffective and contributed to Confederate defeats. McMurray's work sparked a lively debate among historians, prompting a re-examination of Lee's leadership and the Army of Northern Virginia's organization. Following McMurray's work, and who I would argue is probably the premier Civil War historian currently living, is Gary W. Gallagher. And this publication from, I believe, 1997, it's called The Confederate War, How Popular Will, Nationalism, and Military Strategy Could Not Stave Off Defeat. Dr. Gallagher focuses on how the Confederacy fought the war and how they were actually possibly able to win the war. Obviously, they didn't. In his study, he examined the broader context of Confederate strategy and leadership, including Lee's Corps command structure. And he argues that Lee's military strategy was sound, which some historians have argued contributed to the Confederacy's ultimate defeat. Lee was a proponent of aggressive action. Some historians have argued, well, Joey Johnston had a better approach by focusing on the defensive. But Gallagher, through his analysis, argues that the only real way for the South to win, based on the situation that they were in, fighting against the North, which was stronger, had larger population, had more resources, the only way for the South to win was to follow Lee's strategies, which was, we don't have to defeat the Union Army. We don't have to destroy it necessarily. We just have to continue fighting until the northern population's will to fight erodes, and then we can achieve a negotiated peace. The South didn't want to conquer the North. The Confederacy, their whole goal was independence, which they could achieve by following that strategy. He also argues that Lee's military strategy was sound, but it was undermined by the Confederacy's weak political and social infrastructure. And as I said, he's probably the top expert on the Civil War living today, I believe. Another one of his publications is Lee and His Generals in War and Memory. He's wrote volumes and volumes, given hundreds of lectures, and just a I believe all-around expert on the Civil War in general, but generally and the Army of Northern Virginia in particular. Subsequent historians include R. Stephen Jones, who focused on the command structure, not only in the Army of Northern Virginia, but throughout the Civil War and the failures. He has published a book on that. Alan T. Jones is another more recent historian that's focused on General Lee and the Corps Command in the Civil War. Another recent scholar is Joseph T. Gladhar. He's published several works. He's collaborated with Gallagher as well in some. This is one of his books that I found very useful. It's called General Lee's Army from Victory to Collapse. And Jeffrey D. Wirt also is another scholar that has published a lot of works in the last 10 years that have really focused on the Army of Northern Virginia and Lee. And another historian I'd like to include, he's more of a proponent of the importance of the Western theater. But in this book, Beneath a Northern Sky, A Short History of the Gettysburg Campaign, it's Dr. Stephen E. Woodworth, who is a professor at TCU and at Liberty. I've had the pleasure of working with and find his leadership very helpful. A lot of these recent historians have contributed valuable insights into Lee's leadership, military strategy, and the social dynamics within the Army of Northern Virginia. And I found a lot of very, very useful and enlightening primary sources through these authors' works. In conclusion, through this historiographical examination, it becomes clear that the study of Lee's Corps command structure remains a vibrant and dynamic field of study, with new perspectives and approaches continually being developed. Thank you.